Hello, children. I welcome you to the third and the last session of the chapter Colonization of India. Up till now, we have discussed how the Britishers annexed Bengal, then Maharashtra, then later on Punjab. Today, we shall be discussing about the different policies of the Britishers, which were the brainchild of different governor generals. Let's get started. Okay. So first, let's discuss about Lord Wellesley's policy. Now, he suggested two policies. One did more to annex any kingdom or subsidiary alliance. Now, what do you mean by subsidiary alliance? Under subsidiary alliance, the Britishers compelled the Indian rulers to dissolve their own army and rather station British army in their own kingdom. So the British army was stationed in the kingdoms of the Indian rulers. Then they promised that they would protect the Indian rulers, and in return, the Indian rulers had to pay them an annual compensation. If they failed to pay that annual sum, then a part of their territory was annexed by the Britishers. So see, they stationed their own army. The British army was stationed in the kingdoms of the Indian rulers. Of course, the British army would never raise arms against the Britishers. So they secured their position this way. And besides this, they also appointed a British officer called Resident. They said that he was just there to suggest or advise the ruler, but in reality, he interfered in the matters, and the king was just a puppet in the hands of that resident. And no other foreigner was allowed in the court other than the Britishers. Then two Indian rulers could not negotiate with each other, could not get united without the permission of the Britishers. And through subsidiary alliance, they were able to capture Hyderabad. The Nizam of Hyderabad was the first to accept this. Then later on, Bajirao accepted this. Many Rajputana chiefs accepted this, and the Britishers used to get annual sum of money in return of subsidiary alliance, and this helped them to run administration in Europe, in Britain. Then let's discuss paramountcy. What do you mean by paramountcy? Let's see. Now, this was suggested by Lord Hastings. What was it? Let's see that. Paramountcy. Now, Lord Hastings suggested that the ultimate power in India lay with the East India Company, and the East India Company therefore could annex any kingdom in its interest. If the company felt that something was in its interest, that occupying some territory was in its interest, then it could capture that without any ifs and buts, without any questions. So this allowed the Britishers to capture the kingdoms without stating any reason. They would just state that it was in the interest of the company. They needed that place to expand their trade, and so they captured places. So this was suggested by Lord Hastings that the ultimate power was with the East India Company. They could annex any place that they felt that capturing was important for their own interest, in their own interest. See, even today, the government can say tell people to displace from one place if they have to construct dam there. That is also paramountcy only. However, the government compensates in that case. But then this here, Lord Hastings used to capture the places without compensating the people, and they had very selfish intentions. The government has genuine reasons to displace people. So, but they did not have any good intentions. They always had those evil intentions. And when they tried to capture Kittur, so there was Rani Chennamma. She was very, very brave, and she fought against the Britishers. And she fought, of course, because she did not accept this. And but then the Britishers killed her, and she was killed. Then what happened? The Russians were also trying to capture the other countries. The way the Britishers captured India, the Russians were also planning to capture Afghanistan and Sindh. So the Britishers tried capturing Afghanistan and Sindh to stop the to stop the Russians. They wanted to rule over the entire world. They did not want Russia to rule. However, they could not capture Afghanistan, but then they were able to capture Sindh. Then, so far I have discussed about Lord Wellesley's policy, direct war, subsidiary alliance. I've discussed about paramountcy by Lord Hastings. Now let's discuss about Lord Dalhousie. Lord Dalhousie suggested doctrine of lapse, according to which if any ruler died without any natural heir, when I say heir, the spelling is here, there are homophones, H-E-I-R. Without any natural heir means without any, say, without any without any son, and then their kingdom would fall into the hands of the Britishers. And when I say natural heir, that means they did not have right to adopt a son and claim that this son would annex the throne further. So they made this rule that if a ruler died without any natural heir, then the kingdom would fall into the hands of the Britishers, and adopt right to adopt a child, the male child, right to adopt a son was not allowed. Right of adoption was not there. Now see how unscrupulous it was. First of all, adopting a child is a very, very private and a very personal decision. Nobody should interfere in this, right? Second of all, they were outsiders. Third of all, they were no one to dictate the Indian rulers whom to give the kingdom and whom not to give the kingdom, right? Whom to make the next ruler. But then they did so. This was because of the disunity amongst the Indians that made them so very powerful that they started dictating the Indian rulers and they started interfering so much in the private matters, right? So, and this is how they were able to capture. They were able to capture Jhansi. Rani Lakshmi Bai. She did not have any biological son, so they captured and they did not recognize her adopted son as the heir. And then she was at daggers drawn with the Britishers, and eventually she became a martyr. Then this is what happened when they did not recognize Nana Sahib. Then, besides this, many rulers they had adopted sons, and the Britishers were not ready to recognize them as the heirs. And as a result, Satara, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Nagpur, Jhansi were annexed by the Britishers under the policy of doctrine of lapse. Then there was a ruler in Awadh, and his name was Wajid Ali Shah. He was in very good terms with the Britishers, and then also they annexed Awadh, stating that it was mismanaged. There was a lot of mismanagement. And when they came into power in Awadh, they raised the taxes. This infuriated the people living in Awadh, and this led to revolt of 1857, about which we will discuss in detail. So, see, I have discussed that how they captured Bengal, then about the different areas of Maharashtra, then Punjab, then they annexed Satara, Udaipur, and so many places under doctrine of lapse, under subsidiary alliance. All the places came under them, like Hyderabad. Then there was paramountcy. So these were, and this is how the entire India came under them. Then, of course, they were interested in the coastal areas. Right? Why they were interested in the coastal areas? Because the coastal areas provided them a means of transportation. They could take away all the fine raw materials from India to Britain, and then they could convert it into finished goods, and then they could bring it back to India through the waterways. So they were very, very interested in the waterways. The three places they were actually very interested in were there were three presidency cities: Kolkata, earlier known as Bengal; Mumbai, earlier known as Bombay; Chennai, earlier known as Madras. These three presidencies were very, very important. Of course, they were located along the waterways, which allowed the Britishers to trade with India and to take away all the raw material from India and then convert it into finished goods and then once again sell it in India. Then each presidency was under a governor, and the Governor General was the supreme head. The first Governor General was Warren Hastings. Who was the first Governor General? Warren Hastings. Okay, then besides this, each district was divided, means each place was divided into various districts, and each district was looked after by a collector. So a place was divided into various districts, and each district was looked after by collector. Collector had an office called collectorate. Collector had an office called collectorate, which was very, very important, which was the center of power in the district. So there were various districts. Each district was looked after by a collector who collected revenue. He had an office called collectorate. And before 1853, what happened? The Britishers did not hold any civil service examinations, and the company directors used to nominate the civil servants. The civil servants means IAS officers. But then after 1853, they started holding civil service examinations. However, they were held in London. So very few affluent Indians could afford flying to London and appearing for the civil service examination. Satyendranath Tagore, the brother of Rabindranath Tagore, was the first person to clear the civil service examination. So, Indian civil service examination was cleared by Satyendranath Tagore, brother of Rabindranath Tagore. Then, let's discuss about police. The Britishers only introduced, proper police administration in India. Each district was looked after by DSP, District Superintendent of Police. Even today, we have this, we have this method, we have this hierarchy. So each district was looked after by DSP, District Superintendent of Police. Each district had various thanas, various police stations, right? And each police station was managed by a daroga, that is superintendent. And of course, in towns and villages, there were chowkidars who were there. Then, before the arrival of the Britishers, there were no proper courts, but then the Britishers introduced courts, and they divided courts into two types: civil courts and criminal courts. Civil courts means where property related cases, or where personal disputes can be resolved, and criminal courts are where cases pertaining to robbery, murder, etc. are heard. So the civil courts were presided over by European district collector, European, right? And criminal courts were looked after by Qazi or Mufti. Then they introduced, they tried to understand Hindu laws, and then they made Hindu laws. They adopted Hindu laws, means they made a proper code of Hindu laws. Like this is allowed in Hinduism, this is not allowed in Hinduism. And then they made proper Muslim law code also. And then they eventually compiled all the codes in one book, and it came to be known as Indian Penal Code. So they only made this Indian Penal Code, which we follow even today. We have this Indian Penal Code in which it is written that for this crime, under this article, the person should be given this punishment. So this was also framed during the time of the Britishers. The Britishers only introduced codes of two types: civil codes and criminal codes, that we have even today. And for the first time, the code was introduced in the first code was established in Calcutta. Then I discussed that they compiled all the Hindu laws, the Muslim laws, and then they compiled it in Indian Penal Code. Then army. If I talk of army, the Britishers modernized Indian army for their own advantage. Earlier they used muskets and matchlocks, but then later on they introduced new equipments. Then there was professionalism. They were not allowed to wear tilaks. They were not allowed to wear turbans. Of course, this hurt the sentiments of Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, that they were not allowed, to follow their own customs. And then the European soldiers called the Indian soldiers as sepoys, Actually, they derived this word sepoys from sipahi. And the Indians were discriminated in military also, in army also. In army, the Indians could not rise above the post of Subedar. That was a very lower position. And besides that, the Indian soldiers were given inferior food in comparison to the British. They were given inferior food, they were given less salaries, they could not rise above the post of Subedar. And very beautifully, Dadabhai Naroji has expressed his views about disunity and the amount we the Indians paid for disunity. And he has beautifully written all this in his book, Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, where he discusses about the advantage, the undue advantage taken by the Britishers due to disunity amongst the Indian rulers. With this, I wind up the chapter. I wind up about the administration system, which was introduced by Lord Cornwallis. He only introduced about civil services, about courts, and then he made various, various changes in our administration system, army, courts, etc. And I request all of you to take very good care of yourselves and revise well. Thank you and have a great day ahead.